This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. Hi. What do you guys want to talk about? This is such good shit. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
So how about that SmackDown review, huh? I just want to state for the record, I'm not doing it on purpose. We're just in a weird cycle right now with the Monday shows where I don't want to do more than 3 segments because I don't have the time or the energy to talk about more than like 4 or 5 programs. And especially with situations like what we had over the weekend with WWE, there's absolutely no reason for me to review a go-home show when the pay-per-view is the following day. And by the time we actually talk about the pay-per-view, the TV show is completely redundant. So we're kind of at a crossroads right now. No pun intended. Like, I want to review SmackDown, but between the WWF retro content, the NXT stuff, and the premium live specials with WWE, the SmackDown shows are always going to take a back seat. But I'll keep trying. I think I'm just going to stop making empty promises that they'll resume soon, because at the rate I'm going, I don't know when soon is going to be. Could be 3 or 4. Maybe 5. Name that quote. So with that said, as you can tell by today's Monday title, we've got a Clash at the Castle to talk about. Whose castle? I have no clue. Apparently somebody who resides in Scotland. It was certainly a clash for Drew McIntyre. But we will discuss all that in great detail in just a moment. As always, if you are watching for the first time, make sure to subscribe, comment, like the show. Check us out on either YouTube or Rumble every week for new podcast episodes, Mondays and Fridays. We got a lot of different material we juggle here on the channel, including a good amount of classic content. So if you're a fan of the territory footage, you'll probably enjoy at least a good chunk of the segments we do here, especially Fridays. Mondays have sort of become the designated WWF, WWE podcasts. That was never deliberate. It just kind of worked out that way. But now that we've confirmed that I'm a lying sack of shit, let's talk about this PLE. The one that I had no recollection of happening since I haven't watched SmackDown since a Stone Age. And that is one thing I do want to say up front, before we delve into anything here. Am I the only one that's getting a little burnt out on the premium live events every month? Like, especially with all the stuff we're doing with the retro WWF reviews, factoring in the pay-per-view recaps, and all the in-your-house events. I mean, it really just seems like I have no energy to even watch SmackDown at this point. And, like, I don't remember this being a problem last year. Maybe it's all catching up to me. I mean, we've been doing this for 3 years now. Kind of figured it was going to happen eventually. Regardless, WWE Clash at the Castle, as far as I remember, I don't think WWE did one of these last year, correct? Was it 2 years ago that Drew got the title shot against Roman? And everybody really thought that was Drew's moment? Well, we're here a couple years later. Took a long time for him to rebuild himself from scratch. But I think you can at least make the case that Drew's one of the most entertaining figures on WWE right now. He's certainly the best heel promo they have. That's for sure. But the story by the end of this thing, the McIntyre jinx continues. Just seemed too good to be true. The idea that he would win the world title in his hometown 2 years after getting screwed the first go-around by the Bloodline. Now, this year, it was a different individual that screwed him. And oddly enough, it wasn't Drew that came out the worst for wear in that whole equation. Now, we'll talk about what happened to Damian Priest. It was a brutal sight. First off, let's talk about the opener here with AJ Styles and Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship. It's an I Quit match because why not? Apparently we haven't had one of those in a hot minute. Guess it was time to break out the annual I Quit stipulation for no reason. After AJ lowballed the entire world with that fake retirement speech on SmackDown, trying to show up Mark Henry 10 years after he did it, it is still a bit strange to think that this feud is still going on after Cody already beat AJ clean a couple months back. Was it Backlash? Then they randomly put that feud on hold so that Cody could feud with Logan Paul for whatever reason. Now we've cycled back to the AJ thing. It's just kind of weird. But I did enjoy their previous title match. The question was how the gimmick stipulation here would get in the way of it. I'm typically not a fan of pay-per-view openers that have some kind of no DQ, anything goes stipulation attached to it. To me, it doesn't really leave much room for growth in the card. It's the whole debate of following a shooting with a stabbing. You do some kind of no DQ street fight in the opener, and then you try to follow all that with a series of standard wrestling matches. It always kind of seems backwards to me. I'm also not really a fan of the modern I Quit format where the ref just has to stand there holding a microphone the whole time, arbitrarily asking, "Do you quit?" And the wrestler has to do the overdramatic, "Hell no!" response. Am I the only one that kind of thinks that's stupid and hokey? And it's especially stupid when you get moments like what we had here, where both guys brawl into the gorilla position, and you got guys sitting around watching monitors. There's all this technical equipment hanging around. But like you notice, nobody's ever running for their lives or trying to get out of the way. They just have to sit there while these two grown men are having a street fight around them. But nobody's actually concerned for their safety. Like AJ and Cody, you can clearly tell they're trying to avoid knocking stuff over. So dumb. Then they just fight back to the ring a few minutes later and keep doing moves. So with that all said, this took a while to get going. But by the end, I thought they ended up piecing together a pretty good little match. The Jews definitely added to the drama, and it's such a rarity that you see intentional blood in wrestling anymore. When you actually do see it, it means something. I mean, Cody's kind of looked like a pap smear by the end, but hey, like I said, they don't get to blade that often, so you can't fault him for lack of practice. And yes, they did introduce gimmicks and weapons here, but I appreciated that it didn't just devolve into a series of jackass routines. They weren't just putting each other through furniture to pop the crowd and then no-selling shit like 3 seconds afterwards. You had AJ working over Cody methodically. Again, they do the deal on the floor where Cody got rammed into the timekeeper's table face first, so he comes up bleeding from the forehead. AJ's being a good heel with all the smack talking. They had the whole thing with Cody's mama hanging out at ringside. Generally, I wasn't a fan of all that, mostly because her acting was bad and just kind of made the whole thing come off lame. But they try to get creative with the angles here. They got handcuffs involved. I did kind of laugh when Michael Cole exposed the absurdity of the handcuff gimmick. They do this really sick spot where AJ is setting up Cody for the springboard forearm, but then Cody throws the chair at AJ's face. Then AJ takes this nasty bump off the apron and then falls through the table on the floor. And then as Cody goes to grab the key to free himself, Cole just can't help but go, and Cody going to grab the key that was also conveniently inside the bag with the handcuffs. Because why wouldn't it be? Even he knew how ridiculous it was. But they ended up doing the deal where Cody gets AJ trapped in the cuffs. He puts one end around his wrist and then the other over the middle rope. Ends up going after him with a chair so he can hit him about a half a dozen times. And, admittedly so, the finish kind of fell flat. Cody goes out to grab the ring steps, and he's holding him overhead to make it look like he's about to blister AJ in the corner. But then AJ just does the chicken shit, I quit! So then Cody's left standing there with Pete in hand as they play his music. And then he just ends up hitting AJ with the steps anyway. That was kind of a dick move. Again, what they did here was good. I'm just so jaded when it comes to match stipulations anymore. Like to be truthful, I honestly can't recall the last time I actually gave a shit about an I Quit match in wrestling. Probably not since Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard in the cage at Starrcade 85. They're just so cut and paste, You've seen one I Quit match, you've pretty much seen them all. At least when it comes to modern I Quit matches. They've just been done to death over the last 20 years. I genuinely don't get excited to see them anymore. They're so frequent. None of them really stand out. And I like both these guys as athletes. But honestly, aside from the use of blood, they didn't really do anything here that left any kind of long-standing mark. Cody wins. Kind of predictable. I think a lot of his material is going to kind of seem like wait and see until we get to SummerSlam. The post-match stuff with Cody getting jumped by the Bloodline, then getting promptly saved by Randy and Kevin Owens. I think most people are presuming the title program for SummerSlam is going to be Cody and Randy. I highly doubt they're going to rematch Cody and Roman that soon. They could potentially go in the direction of Solo versus Cody, but I don't know if they want to have the Bloodline do a job this soon. Rhodes versus Orton does at least have a freshness to it. There's history there. I think Orton turning heel is inevitable at this point. Not really sure how you would factor Owens into all that, but we'll see. Again, solid opener. Cody's still mega over with the fans. So they're on the right path with him as the babyface champion. They just need to keep that same momentum going as they had when he was the chaser. So then we follow that with a three-way girls tag match. The epitome of following a filet steak with a half-cooked burger from Mickey D's. Garbage. Come on, really now? You actually thought I was going to watch that bullshit? Just to see Alpha Fire and Ishmael Dawn win a set of tag belts and nobody in their right mind gives a crap about? When is the last time those two were even booked on TV prior to the Clash build? If they were seen on television more than 3 times prior to June of 2024, I'd be shocked. I totally forgot they existed. Then they just show up here in Glasgow and win the tag straps from Jade and Bianca for literally no other reason than they were in their homeland. Like, seriously, why bother? Why sacrifice what you were doing with Jade and Bianca for that? Didn't make a lick of sense to me. I mean, for all we know, Jade and Bianca could just win the belts back in another month. Because they're obviously building to something between those two. If the end game is to have them feud against each other, maybe as early as SummerSlam perhaps, I'm not against it. Probably could have come up with a more dramatic way to end their title reign. Well, what do I know? But again, a lot of that was mostly background noise. I picked back up at things when we got to the Sami Zayn-Chad Gable Intercontinental title match. The match that should have happened last month before they threw boring Bronson's fat ass in there for no discernible reason. But at least they gave us the one-on-one match. And boy, was it a million times better than that stupid 3-way they did the other month. Not just factoring in all the angles that took place here, but the actual wrestling itself. It's amazing how much better a match is when you have 2 guys targeting body limbs and registering offense. And it's not just a conglomeration of meaningless spots for 15 minutes. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought Gable was an outstanding, disparaging dirtbag heel. I mean, we all know how fantastic Sami is when it comes to selling and fighting from underneath. He did a really nice job, especially selling his left arm and shoulder after getting it rammed into the corner buckle. And that was kind of the central focus of what Gable was working. I thought Zayn nearly killed Gable with that half-and-half suplex throw. I mean, he dumped Gable right on top of his fucking head, dude. Another inch or two and Gable would have truly lived up to his moniker of being a modern-day Kurt Angle. Walking around with a broken neck. But of course, all of that was completely secondary to everything going on with Otis and Model Girl. The whole story of the match is milking the eventual blow-up between Otis and Gable. They've been teasing it and teasing it and teasing it for months. Everybody's counting down the day that Otis finally punches his measly little tool in the face. And while they didn't directly go there here, what they actually did was even sweeter. I'm not really sure what the deal is with Model Girl having her foot in a boot cast, whether that's kayfabe or not. I mean, it looked like it was staged, but God, who even knows anymore? With how often guys and gals are crippling themselves in matches doing stupid shit. Put an asterisk next to that for Damian Priest. But she's out there in a boot. She's sort of linked to Otis the whole time. And you get this spot where Gable has Sami in the ankle lock over the barricade. They had already done the spot where Gable berated Model Girl and chewed her out. And Otis eventually got in Gable's face. But then Sami did the flip dive and accidentally took out Otis. But the peak of the match is when Sami counters Gable's ankle lock. And Gable accidentally chop blocked Model Girl in the back of the knee. So she's down selling her foot. Did a really awesome job selling it too. You know, she's clutched up against the ring barricade in pain. And you get that tremendous oh fuck moment where Otis is standing there next to Gable. Gable does the slow dramatic turn to look at Otis. He realizes that he's about to die. But of course, they do more stuff to prevent those two from actually coming to blows. And you fast forward a little bit. Otis scoops up Model Girl and carries her to the back, leaving Gable to fend for himself. And that allows for Sammy to hit Gable with the haluva kick in the corner and pin him. 1, 2, 3. So we do not get Otis turning on Gable directly, but we get the even more cathartic moment where Otis saved the damsel in distress. And all the people are like, yeah, way to go, Otis. You're the man. And it prolongs the story for Raw, which is good. I have to say this too, before we move on to the next segment. Regardless of how you view a lot of the Alpha Academy stuff, God, especially when Vince was still around booking it, that shit was so awful. It was hard to defend, especially when all of them were just acting like goofballs. With that all said, and I really do think this is a true testament to him as an overall talent, Chad Gable is so fucking good. He may be the single most underrated WWE talent today. That last shot they got of him where he's just glaring a hole through Sammy during the post-match celebration, looking totally broken and dejected, like he's about to blow a gasket. That was like one of the highlights of the entire show. Like him just stewing over getting fucked yet again. Like, they've actually gotten me to somewhat care about the Alpha Academy group. And I never thought I would say that. Now, granted, it comes at the tail end of their existence. But these three in particular, Otis, Gable, and Model Girl, I still always forget her actual name. I just go by what Cornette calls her because it's funny. Maxine Dupree, I think her name is. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But they were all fantastic here. Again, I'm sort of skeptical with what happens after Otis eventually beats up Gable and leaves him for dead. I think with how long they've been prolonging this, to me, the end result has to be more than Otis just getting a win over Chad Gable. Yeah, I'm not saying he should be a world champion or anything, but like, what happens after Otis turns face and gets his revenge on Gable? Okay, so he wins the girl, but does he just fall back into the mid-card and lose all that momentum afterwards? Like, those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about if I'm in the Booker seat. It's like, okay, great. We got to this point. The people like him. But can we sustain that? And I think that's where WWE kind of falls short of the mark a lot of the time. I mean, they can really get you excited to see an eventual payoff, but the afterbirth is what you're always worried about. And we're kind of seeing that with Cody right now as the champion. It's like, yeah, they paid off the story, but now they have to make sure they don't lose all the fans along the way. Especially after 2 years of investment. And the jury's still out on that. So moving on from there, yet again, another case in the show where they had to break up the flow with throwing girls out there to suck the energy out of the room. And much like the one we saw earlier, as soon as I saw a graphic pop up for Bayley versus Piper Niven, I said, potty break. I mean, no offense to Bayley, but not really all too enthralled with the idea of having to watch Piper Niven wrestle. And again, I'm not trying to be a hard ass about it, but it kind of goes back to a similar question I asked during the previous tag match. When in the fuck did Piper Niven qualify for title contention? Has she been on television in the last 2 months? Prior to them building to the Scotland pay-per-view? Why did she even get the title shot to begin with? Aside from the lazy answer of they're in Scotland and Piper Niven is from Scotland, so they threw her a bone. Like, I need a better answer to justify wanting to watch her and Bayley wrestle for nearly 15 minutes. So predictably, Bayley won. Again, I had it on as background noise while I was doing other stuff. From what I did see, it didn't look like I missed anything important. I mean, quite frankly, the next time I see a good Piper-Niven match will be the first time I see a good Piper-Niven match. And the stain of Dewdrop is not worn off after all these years. Just saying. So we'll just move on from that pit stop and get to the meat of the matter on this show. The main event. A bittersweet main event at that. It is Drew McIntyre challenging Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight Championship. Faces and heels be damned in this circumstance. Yeah, Drew's been a prick over here in the States. There wasn't a chance in hell that they were going to boo this man in Scotland. And they played that up in the promo package. Basically saying Drew's the hometown hero. Nothing we can do about character continuity here, so fuck it. Let's just lean into it. Damn, this is so unfortunate. I mean, I'm honestly wondering if it's even worth talking about anything else in the match. Beyond the one spot that people are going to be talking about for months. Well, I'll just cut to the chase here. They do a spot where Priest tries to do the leaping senton flip over the top rope. It's a move I've seen him do countless times before. And it's always impressive every time you see it. Because the guy's legit 6'4". He's a big athletic freak in nature that probably shouldn't be able to pull off a spot like that. But of course, as we all know, gravity's undefeated. And I honestly can't explain what went wrong here. Whether he slipped on the middle rope, misjudged his timing. In any case, Priest ends up getting his foot and ankle caught up in the middle and top rope, and all of his body weight basically came down over the ring apron. So he's hung there upside down in the ropes. His foot is legitimately trapped. It looks so bad. And I even thought, as soon as I saw his foot get wrapped up like that, I was like, there's no way that guy should be able to walk. And, hell, he was limping. That's for sure. I'm surprised he was able to put any weight on it at all. And you know what? I'll just go ahead and say it. Damian Priest is the fucking man. I had to tip my hat to him here. He earned my respect after this. I mean, you could clearly tell he was fucked. And honestly looked, and again, maybe this is just weird perception on my end. My eyes playing tricks on me. It looked like you could actually see the swelling underneath the boot. Like the way his foot was kind of angled to the side. I mean, obviously it wasn't broken off the bone or anything, otherwise the guy wouldn't have been able to walk. But you could see that there was something going on underneath. But damn it all, he just kept pushing through to the end. And I got to give Drew credit here as well. He was a super professional. As soon as he saw the botch spot with Priest, he knew he was hurt, went over and checked on him, but he stayed in kayfabe. He was super careful with everything he did afterwards. I think it was one of those deals where you could tell they didn't really want to draw too much attention to the injury, so it really wasn't a focal point of the match. I mean, frankly, I don't think they wanted to further risk any damage to his ankle if they try to keep working it as an injury. So, they kept everything more ground and pound. God, the spot where Priest gave Drew the Hurricane Rana toward the end. I mean, I screamed when I saw that. I was like, this guy's fucking nuts. But they had a lot of drama toward the end. They did a good amount of near falls. They had the people at certain points where they actually thought Drew was about to win the title. And to be honest with you, I mean, up until the ref bump spot, whether or not Drew was actually scheduled or planned to win the match, I would have maybe argued a call for an audible, especially if Priest is that fucked up. But as soon as I saw the ref bump and Drew getting the visual pin on Priest with the Claymore, the first thing that hit my mind, I was like, okay, where's Punk? And sure enough, they do the deal where you see a guy running down the aisleway with a ref shirt on. The crowd immediately knew who it was, so they all started booing. But they actually do some clever camera work here to kind of prevent the audience at home from seeing his face. You just see a guy slide into the ring with a ref shirt on. He counts 1. He counts 2. And then he stops. Drew looks up. And he just goes, son of a bitch. It's Punk. And you see Drew get up and grab him by the collar and push him into the corner. Punk goes low into the gonads. And then Priest hits the South of Heaven chokeslam and pins Drew to retain. So the Glasgow curse reigns true for the second time. Drew failed to capture gold on his home turf. And this time, thanks to CM Punk, the guy that's been fucking with him for months now, living rent-free inside Drew's head. And the angle itself was brilliant. Here's the problem, though. I think it had the inverse effect of what it was supposed to have. Because based on the story they've been telling throughout this entire program, Punk's clearly been the babyface. But again, because they were in Drew country here, when Punk screwed him at the end, the fans unanimously shat all over Punk. With a handful of exceptions, of course. But by and large, they were not a fan of this. So I'm not really sure what the thought process was. They had to have known that Punk was going to get booed out of the building, right? So why do this here? Unless they're trying to make Drew McIntyre the babyface now? And it's some kind of modified double turn? Or again, they're just figuring he'll be a bad guy when they return to the States for Raw. I don't know. It was a well-done angle. It was kind of bizarre when it came to the timing and location of it. And again, man, you really had to feel for Damian Priest here. That camera shot they got on him after he covered Drew. He gets the 3 count. And he immediately covers up his face. God damn it. He knew how bad it was. And he and Drew were talking afterwards. You could see that. Priest was on his stomach covering up. Drew, you could see, was kind of mouthing some things to him. Probably asking him, how bad is it? But again, somehow Priest was able to walk out under his own power. He limped all the way up that damn aisleway. And that was a long fucking aisleway. But, I'm interested to see what they do on the following Raw. I'm not going to watch it, of course. But I'll kind of keep up with the news. Hopefully they don't have to Rhea Ripley his ass. Because that would be horrible. In a way, the timing of it, they have been kind of teasing a babyface turn with him for a while. If this moment didn't cement that turn fully, then I don't know what they're waiting for. It was certainly the most courageous fight from underneath I've seen in all of 2024. Adrenaline is a powerful drug, though. When it gets going, it's almost like the human mind becomes impervious to any kind of physical pain. That's the only way I can explain Priest getting through that match after that horrific spot. Because that happened pretty early on, too. They were only like 5 minutes in when that happened. And they still had to go another 15. So I hope he's okay. I mean, he's not a young guy. I don't think his body's going to heal up the same way it would if he were, say, 25 years old. Father Time is working against him. But we'll monitor all that. Overall, though, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the 3 matches I watched. Not accounting for what happened with the girls, because fuck that. But AJ and Cody, thought was pretty good overall, even if the gimmick match wasn't my cup of tea. Sammy and Gable, I thought was really damn good. I loved all the stuff with Otis and Maxine. Like, those interactions were outstanding without getting ridiculously theatrical. And Drew versus Priest was 1,000 times better than it probably should have been, especially considering the injury. And those guys worked their asses off to get through that one. So I really can't complain about it. I mean, I'm not going to waste my time watching the shit that doesn't interest me, but again, the shows are reasonable lengths. The crowds are energetic. You know, WWE's kind of found a formula that works for them. The international market is really working in their favor right now. I mean, the singing kind of gets annoying at times, but at least they're not sitting on their hands taking a nap for the majority of these pay-per-views. Again, there is always going to be a burnout factor to consider with the monthly PLEs, but provided they don't overstay their welcome and they keep these shows within those 2 to 3 hour windows, I'm fine with it. So on that wonderful note, let's do Raw. At least I know when these shows are upcoming. Not that I look forward to them in the slightest. I don't think there was a single wrestling fan alive in the year 1995 that said, "Oh man, I'm really looking forward to that next episode of Monday Night Raw." Especially now when half the show is the announcers talking about fucking feet. You know, I'm basically at the point now where I legitimately have to watch half of these shows on mute. Anytime the topic of feet is brought up on the commentary team, my gag reflexes start to kick in. Seriously, it didn't take them 1 minute into the show this week, and already Vince was talking about Jerry Lawler's hideous, putrid, stinky, rotten, smelly feet. That was how they opened. And I was like, I mean, I could literally feel my skin crawl. It was beyond grossed out. They finally found my one Achilles heel, and now they're blatantly exploiting it. Just trying to get me to vomit on command. You know, at the rate I'm going right now, I think I'm actually going to have a barf bucket beside me when we review SummerSlam. I might do a live reaction. A first time ever here on the FSWR channel. Watch and see Tommy openly puke at the sight of seeing human feet on camera. That'll happen too. That's the funny part. So getting off that subject. Well, Raw was Raw. The shows are so fucking bad, dude. I mean, there's nothing new to report on there. Just more of the same when it comes to 45 minutes of either boring squash material or angles that just make you want to quit wrestling altogether. They can't even make my all-time favorite worthwhile anymore. They started the show with Taker this week. And I was like, okay, well, at least I get to watch the dead man kill some job guys and look badass doing it. And it was just sort of a match. He wrestled some buggy whipped arm fuck. Never seen the guy before. Didn't even bother writing a name down. Kind of looked like Adam Cole with a mullet. And actually, on second thought, this guy actually had more body definition than Cole. So that's probably not a fair comparison. In any case, Taker killed him with the tombstone. It was one of those matches where, as I noted earlier, I had to mute the commentary once Vince started talking about Lawler's decaying feet. I did laugh at the end, though, when Taker actually gave him the tombstone. And Vince just goes, "Imagine if that was Mabel." And I said, "Yeah. If Taker was in a hurry to confine himself to a back brace for the rest of his life. Sure. I'd love to see him try to hoist that big tub of goo up. Good luck." Tombstoning Mabel. As if. Taker was a strong motherfucker, but he wasn't a Greek god. So then we came back from break to hear Mad Mountain Rock cut a Spitfire promo on Bob Backlund. He's all pissed off that Backlund broke his guitar the other week. I don't even remember if I mentioned that segment, because it was so goddamn stupid. But yeah, that was the thing. And, well, Mad Mountain was so irate about this, he proceeded to cut a promo on Backlund by saying, "That's my soul, man. That wasn't cool, man." So obviously he's emotionally distraught. And by the way, for those of you wondering, the WWF was so financially in the hole during this period in 95, they couldn't even bother to get a real Fender Stratocaster for that angle. Or just find some kind of dirt sheet model replica online. They got a fucking Guitar Hero gimmick. Some plastic looking shit. That's how bad things were in the company around this point. I mean, Fenders are, what, $3,000 at the most? You're telling me they didn't have that to blow in 1995? Christ almighty. So then Adam Bomb wrestled Bill Payne. I was in pain trying to watch this match. Yet another segment where I had to mute on and off because of Lawler's commentary. We did, however, get an APA reference here. About 3 years before they actually debuted. It was not directly related to Bradshaw or Ron Simmons, by the way. Bomb won with a top rope lariat. He's still god-awful in the ring. You'll be hearing quite more of that if and when we even get to more of his work throughout the late 90s. Trust me, there's plenty more to say about Brian Clark's in-ring career. And not a lot of it is good. So up next, we have the Head Shrinkers versus Sid and Tatanka. Yes, for those wondering, this weird version of the Head Shrinkers still exists here in 1995. The Barbarian is still around collecting a paycheck. God bless his soul. Of course, at this point in the show, we've reached the peak. I'll give them credit. At least here they bothered to put some actual star power out there. Loose air quotes around that. I mean, the match was fine for what it was. Predictable as all get out. But obviously they're trying to keep the $1 million corporation fresh before the King of the Ring next weekend. I will say, a couple little brief notes about the match here. And this is truly what makes Sid Vicious an all-timer. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. His overselling and facials are out of this world. They do a spot right before the big comeback. Sid's in there working over Fatu, and he does the big lumbering guy routine where he takes like 9 years to dramatically set up the leg drop spot. And of course, you can call it a mile away. You know Sid's going to miss. So Fatu rolls over. Sid lands on the mat. And you just see him panting and overreacting. His arms are stretched out wide. He's turning his head in both directions to make sure everybody can see him in pain. And it's like, I mean, the whole thing is so campy. But because it's Sid, you would absolutely expect that to be a thing that happens. He's such a walking tree stump. So of course he's going to miss the leg drop and sell like someone just jammed a butt plug up his ass. Because it's Sid. And he rules the world. So they're doing stuff at the end during the Barbarians' comeback. Or Sione, I guess we're still calling him around this point. I prefer the ring name The Barbarian. But we don't have Paul Jones here to speak on his behalf. And, well, it breaks down into a four-way. You see Sid powerbombing Fatu into the ring and damn near killing him, trying to throw him out to the floor. Fatu's neck got caught up in the ring ropes. What is it with Samoans getting their necks caught in ring ropes and nearly strangling themselves to death? This is like the 50th time we've seen this happen to the head shrinkers in the last 2 years. Remember that same thing happened at the Royal Rumble. Was it 95 or the year prior? I specifically remember a spot where Fatu got tossed over the top rope and he nearly hanged himself because he got his neck trapped between the top and middle rope. These Samoans were not good at judging distance between the ropes and their own heads. So, Sid and Tatanka go over after they powerbomb Sione on the floor. They ended up rolling him back in the ring so Tatanka could get the pin. And again, it's all to hype the tag match for the King of the Ring. It's Sid and Tatanka versus Diesel and Bam Bam, which is like barely something I would consider a TV main event. And of course, the underlying story and all that is how healed up Diesel's going to be. Because he's still got the elbow injury he's dealing with. So he may be going in at less than 100%. And that's a physical disadvantage, as opposed to a mental one. I always just kind of presume Kevin Nash went into his matches mentally at less than 100%. I mean, the guy only had 5 moves anyway. If you count the hair flip, of course. So, well, then we had more Lawler feet-related crap that I couldn't sit through. And the next thing I have in my notes is Hunter Hearst Helmsley versus Buck Quartermain. Another instance where I have to point out, since we're talking about Hunter here, it only took Vince another 3 goddamn years before he finally woke up and said, "Well, come on, pal. It's too many syllables. Would you just call him Triple H?" He eventually figured it out. Also another case where Hunter was doing moves that he probably never did at any other point in his career after we saw it here, including a spinning back elbow and a tilt-a-whirl back breaker. The innovation was quite remarkable. And then he became a somewhat successful star, and he realized, well, I don't need to do any of that shit. I'll just do like 3 moves and then hit my pedigree and win. And it worked out for him. And we did actually see him win with a pedigree here. Still looked a little raw. He didn't really set it up the way he would later on once he refined it. But it's another notch in the W column for Mr. Helmsley. Still well before the roids kicked in, and he was about 3 times the size he is now. That's going to be such a culture shock. That period from like 99 to 2001, whenever it was, where Hunter just came out one week and looked jacked. And then he just kept getting bigger and bigger each week. The gas is an amazing substance. What can you say? I do not condone it, for the record. I'm just saying, if you want results, it'll show. So that took us to the main event of Shawn Michaels versus Guff Stephanopoulos. Or Papadopoulos. Whoever the fuck the geek's name was. Probably the only time in history where I would ever defend Shawn acting like an insufferable jackass on television. Getting stuck having to wrestle this walking baked potato with arms and legs. Of course, Shawn is still annoying as fuck. Just openly making a mockery of the whole thing. Drawing way too much unnecessary attention to himself. He's out there trying to play chicken with the guy. Outrunning him on the floor. But because it's Shawn, he has to skip around like a schoolgirl just to let everybody know that he still has much better cardio than this fat idiot. And like nothing about anything he's doing is babyface-like in quality. He's got a few fans that laugh about it. Me, on the other hand, I'm just rolling my eyes the whole time. I want to punch him in the dick. And he eventually won with his sweet chin music. After toying with him for like 5 minutes and placating to the crowd. It is funny how Jerry Lawler, the heel commentator, was actually speaking truths about Shawn here. And the way he was carrying himself. Saying he's a glory hog. He loves being the center of attention. I mean, he's not wrong. And heels are never supposed to be justified in their comments. The one good piece of business all night from Lawler at the booth. Him calling out Shawn for being a douche. And they also had the quick little post-match with some of the first-round qualifiers in the tournament. You had Kama and Taker and Mabel out there staring each other down. Kind of trying to indicate that the tournament could be a toss-up. Any of these guys could win it. And I'll be honest, out of all 8 guys involved, if you would have asked me at the time, prior to my ever seeing that pay-per-view unfold, never would have put Mabel at the top of the pecking order. But that's a discussion we'll have this coming weekend when we actually review the King of the Ring pay-per-view. I mean, I probably could have just skipped this entire go-home show, because there wasn't much of note going on. Aside from the turn the channel heat commentary. But we'll see how that pay-per-view holds up. I have not seen it since I was a wee little lad. I remember hating the finish of the tournament. I remember absolutely nothing about Diesel and Bam Bam versus Tatanka and Sid. Probably for justifiable reasons. I do also remember that incident. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, look at the artwork for the Retro Raws we're doing. Check out the face mask Taker's wearing. You could put 2 and 2 together. So NXT, you know, the show that just beat Dynamite in the ratings the other week. Yeah. So now that I've pissed off all the marks, what do we got going on this week? In the land of retro, Well, just to recap, last week, we saw Tyson Kidd lose to Adrian Neville in his title rematch. And this was the week where they kind of handled the fallout from all that. Most notably starting with Natalya's suggestion to make it up to Tyson, since she kind of feels responsible for costing him the match. She went straight to the GM for this one, so you know she's serious about it. To make it up for Tyson losing his title match the other week, Natty wants Tyson to form a tag team with Sami Zayn. Now, of course, the underlying premise and all that is that they would get a title shot out of it. But they never actually said that in the pre-tape. You see Natty talking with Bradshaw. She wants Tyson to team up with Sami, and that was basically all they addressed. They never once mentioned the titles and or the Ascension by name. So when you fast forward to the main event this week, and it's Tyson Kidd and Sami Zayn versus the Ascension for the belts, you're like, wait, what? How did these guys automatically bypass all the other tag teams on the roster? Well, probably because there were no other tag teams. But we will speak on that later on. First, we have to talk about the way they opened the show this week. A fucking glow spectacular if there ever was one. And by the way that statement came across, you're probably figuring it's not good news. You are correct. It is not. The match is Sasha Banks versus Alexa Bliss. I could honestly just stop the conversation right there. I don't think any more needs to be said. But for contextual purposes, we'll go ahead and talk about it. First of all, let's address the pink elephant in the room first. Alexa's Tinkerbell gimmick. Holy fuck, is that awful. And it is so Vince McMahon on every level. The stereotypical smiley hot blonde in the scampy outfit that shakes her ass and poses for the camera in very suspect fashion. I mean, you know Vince's fingerprints were all over that one. The match is beyond horrible. Look like two girls sleepwalking through a rehearsal of spots. It is kind of the modern wrestling catch-22 we see often today, where you take two green rookies that couldn't do a lockup if their life depended on it. So instead, they just try to do a bunch of rope running spots and sloppy aerial stunts. And because these two girls were really green, even that shit looked terrible. And that wasn't even the big issue. The problem here was the completely random catfight spot that broke out on the floor between Charlotte and Summer Rae for no reason. They're on the floor 1 minute, and then the next, they're just arguing over God knows what. Ends up turning into a legit Mean Girls sketch where they're pulling at each other's hair and squawking and squealing at one another. I'm like, who's writing this shit? Russo? This was straight out of a TNA skit. Insufferable harpies bantering and screaming at one another to the point where you just want to turn the show off in disgust. I mean, the only thing missing here from the equation was everybody calling each other skanks and hoes. It was horrible. So Alexa rolled up Sasha and pinned her. Complete fluke. But that's the story they're running with. That is now twice she has upset Sasha Banks. Meanwhile, all three of the BFFs go at it on the floor until Summer finally walks away. then she does her stripper dance pose at the top of the ramp. Fucking awful, I wrote down here. Should have typed it in all caps. By the way, that all took place within the first 10 minutes. And I was already over it. I'm yet to understand how anybody ever thought this shit was any good. Because I can't stand it. These Barbie doll prissies acting like schoolgirl children. Who's the audience for this? Horny 15-year-olds? Don't answer that. So getting off that topic, because fuck all that noise. We then cut to a pre-tape with Tyson and Natty. Tyson's got this huge welt on his chest. So this was definitely taped after the match with Adrian the other week. And this is actually pretty good. It's adults arguing as opposed to catty children like we just saw in the previous segment. And the story's pretty simple here. Natty's trying to be the supporting wife. Tyson's being the ballsy, pompous jock that insinuates he doesn't need his wife to do his dirty bidding for him. He can handle his business on his own, damn it. So there's obviously some tension boiling there. And Tyson actually had a good go-home line here where he goes, I've got to go talk strategy with my partner, Sammy. It's kind of a thing partners do. Had to be an inside rib. Breaking the fourth wall. No shame. Again, though, I dug this. Tyson's being a bit of a prick. But it's not two people screaming and snarling at each other for 5 minutes. It's just two adults trying to have a mature disagreement. And clearly Tyson's big-headed about it. But hey, he's a dude. It's kind of relatable. As guys, we always hate it when our chicks try to butt into our work lives. Cardinal rule number 1. You don't let your lady go to your boss to try to make suggestions for your career. Big crossing of the line there, dude. Not cool. So then we had our very first vignette preview for the Vaudevillains. Simon Gotch has now debuted. So they have now arbitrarily dropped Aiden's stupid artiste gimmick. Yeah, now he's a fucking carny working another goofy WWE gimmick. Now, to be fair, I actually did not entirely hate the Vaudevillains at the time. I actually kind of thought it was a clever idea. They probably got a little hokey for my liking at times, and this package didn't help their case any. I know the tag division is something that kind of blew up in the next year or so for NXT. And the gimmick sort of had its charm. It got over with the fans. And we didn't have to wait long for their debut, because they wrestled a couple segments later. So you can place your bets now as to whether or not I'm about to poon it. I'll tell you whose gimmick does not hold up in 2024. Is Mojo Rawley. He's still stupid and annoying. He beat some guy named Garrett Dillon, who kind of had that classic 80s job guy look. A tubby, out-of-shape, middle-aged looking dude with a bad haircut and a stone shit face. I actually kind of like this Garrett Dillon guy. For the few seconds he got on offense in there, he had some good mean guy facials. I wanted to see more of him on television than I do Mojo Rawley. Unfortunately, the wrong guy won here. It is kind of funny to think how one-dimensional this guy's character actually is. He's a super herdy guy that bounces off the walls and talks about how hyped he is. And he does a lot of football tackles. I seriously have no clue how anybody ever thought this guy was good. He's horrible. But now we come to the debut of the vaudevilles. And it is everything I remember about the gimmick being back in the day. Up to and including the classic silent film ring intro with the grainy sepia filter. And the ridiculous 20th century piano music. If ever there was a parody of all parodies, this gimmick is the poster child for openly mocking a genre of entertainment from 100 years prior. But here's why I did not entirely hate it. Because even though the gimmick itself was on the nose, when it came bell time, they didn't wrestle like complete parodies. They actually went out there and did standard tag team wrestling. I actually remember having a lot of good things to say about Simon Gotch back in the day. I thought he was a considerably underrated athlete for the time. Of course, the fans immediately fell in love with the gimmick. They started chanting, "Put your dukes up" in the first 30 seconds. I don't even remember who they wrestled here. Angelo Dawkins and some other guy I think we've seen a couple of times. Terry Tyler, something like that. Who cares? It's actually astonishing how much more tolerable Aiden English is now that he's ditched the singing act. I mean, the one thing I couldn't figure out here was whether or not they were supposed to be faces or heels. They were over like baby faces, but they wrestled the match entirely like heels would. They didn't cheat to win or anything. You know, Gotch just hit a fireman senton on the Tyler dude. And then English came off the middle rope with a senton of his own to get the pin. But they definitely acted like heels for the entire match, so I have no idea. Regardless, I didn't hate the segment. I always reserve the right to change my mind in the future, but after one viewing, I am now able to watch an Aiden English segment without having the urge to fast forward because of the singing. So that is steps in the right direction. He's already way ahead of what he was doing before. I mean, they're already the most popular gimmick in NXT. So I cannot say it was a flop. The piano music is beyond preposterous. Other than that, I will give this a solid thumbs up. I will not do the same for the Big Cass interview that followed. Allow for me to read you a direct quote from Cassidy here. This was during the interview with Devin. It is something that was so blatantly scripted for him to say. And boy, did that line fall flatter than a plate full of piss. And I fucking quote, "Well, Devin, it's no secret as of late that things have been going smooth as a fine grain leather for Big Cass. Smooth as a fine grain leather." So he's taking a poetry class, I see. By the way, Cass's career was on the up and up after he got a TV win over Sylvester Lafleur. And I know you all ask, who? Exactly. That's the point. So the punchline here, Cass says that something's been missing in NXT, at which point, plainly stealing Aiden's gimmick, He then sings an excerpt from Dean Martin's That's Amore. And before he actually says the name Amore, he boops Devin on the nose. And I'm not shitting you. That's exactly what happened. He booped Devin. I almost booped this show in the fucking nutsack after I saw that shit. The hell was that? So then Bob Van Dam showed up. Because why not? He was smoking a blunt that morning and decided, yeah, what the hell? I'll come down to Full Sail and scope out the competition. I seriously had forgotten RVD was under a contract during this time. Why don't I remember that? Was he that irrelevant in 2014? He was just a guy on the roster. Well, he came down to challenge Adrian Neville. He said he wants to wrestle the best competition, and nobody's better than the NXT champion. So we're getting Neville versus RVD. I believe next week. Cool. It'll surely be colder than Tyler Breeze versus Kalisto. Not that the match was bad or anything. But I typically don't associate Tyler Breeze and cool in the same sentence. I mean, honestly, I didn't get much out of this match. If you can believe that. I did kind of laugh when the commentators were ragging on Breeze for being a lesser good-looking brother of Seth Rogen. And William Regal just nonchalantly chimes in with, I don't even know who Seth Rogen is. No shame. He's not that important. I thought the fans getting impatient with Breeze's headlock sequence was kind of amusing. If there's one thing we can confirm the NXT fans did not advocate for, headlocks. They did not approve of long-standing headlocks. I mean, Kalisto got a couple of hope spots in there, but by and large, Breeze dominated the bulk of the match. I definitely would not call it the most exciting thing in the world. I popped when you could audibly hear the one guy in the crowd chant, "Time to take it home, boys." He was obviously bored. But Kalisto made a short comeback. Tried to outfoot Breeze with some flashy stuff at the end. But then he tried for a springboard off the ropes. And he ate a beauty shot kick for the 3 count. At best, I could merely call it okay. There was a lot of downtime in the middle where not much was happening. I mean, I can respect a heel trying to slow down the pace and work the crowd. But Breeze wasn't even really doing a whole lot of that. He was just laying in stationary mat holds for a while and not really doing much of anything. You could tell the crowd was getting antsy. But it was alright for getting Breeze a TV win. I mean, he's the number 1 contender, so you want to keep him fresh on people's minds. He's got a record deal after all. Don't want the people to forget about that. And then for our main event. For the NXT Tag Team Championships. The unlikely makeshift duo of Tyson Kidd and Sami Zayn versus the most dominant tag team in NXT history, The Ascension. Also, I believe the debut of Sami's well-known theme music that is still a trademark to this day. It's crazy. All these years later, he's still using that slap-happy upbeat tune. It is a good theme song, I have to admit. It is quite catchy. So whether you would want to call this a match or an extended angle, it's your prerogative. I would classify it as a bit of both. Didn't get a ton of time. Altogether, I think the whole thing went like 6 minutes. You had the Ascension working over Sammy and killing him for virtually the entire match. Tyson's kind of standing on the apron, ambivalent as to what's going on. And finally, he just gets fed up watching his loser partner get his ass handed to him. So Tyson drops down from the apron and lets Sammy fend for himself. And it ends with Sammy eating the fall after getting hit with the Fall of Man. So that one win that Sammy got over Bo Dallas the other week, totally invalidated. He's back to losing every fucking match. The way God intended. And, well, Tyson's still a bitter, resentful dickhole. Nothing changed there. Who exactly was I supposed to cheer for in all this? The Ascension were the most likable guys in the whole thing. And all they had to do was beat up these two small dorks. And they had no problem in doing so. I mean, they practically neutered Sammy here. Didn't give him a lick of offense except for that 2-second comeback he made at the very end. I'm trying to calculate in my head how any of this was constructive in the booking. Like, it's one thing to tear a guy down and build him back up from scratch. But the entire track record for Sammy in the last year has been lose a match, lose a match, lose a match, cut a really passionate promo to fire the people up only to lose the blow-off when it counts the most. How in the fuck is this helping him? This just made him look like the ultimate job guy. I mean, the people were more into Connor and Victor than they were Sammy and Tyson. Why would anybody care about these losers now? I didn't get this at all. I mean, to execute Tyson's heel turn? Didn't we already establish that to be the case already? Why did we need confirmation here? We know he's a heel. He's been a heel essentially since the fans started chanting Natty's husband at him. I don't know, dude. I was not a big fan of this. I do kind of like the story of Tyson being the entitled drama queen. There is a modicum of hilarity to all that. Brett would be proud. But, like, I don't know. I just don't really think this did anybody any favors. But it does kind of get Sammy back into the frame with all the top guys, so even though I would not have done it this way, fine. So again, next week, we have Neville versus RVD. I believe non-title. I presume we'll have more fallout from the drama of Tyson Kidd. I mean, there were definitely a handful of better things on the show this week than normal, but it is still a long way out from being the glory period. And I know there's always going to be a niche audience for all the goofy comedy stuff, but a lot of it just isn't for me. Again, though, at least everyone has normal-sounding names by and large. But that'll wrap up this, whatever day it is. Is it Monday? Yeah, it's Monday. I can't keep track anymore. Hopefully next week we'll actually do SmackDown. I keep leading everybody on to it. It's not my fault. There's too many damn premium live events. But thanks everybody for checking the show out. We'll be back this coming Friday for more of the classic territorial coverage. And we'll keep staying posted as the summer rolls along. Still got a couple months before SummerSlam, and that's the next big WWE event coming up. So we'll catch you guys soon. And thanks, everybody. Take care. Peace out.